Hello, everyone. Welcome to my review of A Moon-Shaped Pool, the ninth LP. Now, we've been waiting about 5 years for this thing. The King of Limbs came out in 2011, is now 2016, and we finally have a new album from Radiohead. Long awaited. Now, they released Burn the Witch. How long was it? A week or so before the album came out, give or take. And then a day or two after that, they released Daydreaming. So 2 singles from the album about a week before the album released. Now, I will say that I do like having singles released close to the album release, because when a single gets released like months ahead of the album's release, that song is usually, at least to me, very rarely listened to once I get to the actual album. Because it's taken out of context of the album, you're listening to it as a single song, so when you listen to the whole album, you just tend to kind of skip over that song just because you are exposed to it a little differently and exposed to it more than the whole album as a cohesive whole. So I kind of like that I didn't get much time with the first 2 songs before all the others came out, because now I can listen to them all in one even stretch without, I've only listened to the singles maybe 5 times each before the actual album came out, not, 25 times. So there's a nice dichotomy between those 2 scenarios, and Radiohead always seems to lean towards the latter, which I think is good. So, I don't think I'll really go much into, because this is the first Radiohead album I reviewed. I was going to review The King of Limbs, but I just kind of never got around to it. That was the same year I reviewed Milo Xyloto, Coldplay's album, and that's kind of just when I started to do album reviews, and I only reviewed albums I really wanted to review or felt like I had something to say. And The King of Limbs, I just didn't have a whole lot to say. I probably could have done a fine review, but it just got away from me. So this is my first Radiohead review. Like I said, I don't think I'll have a whole lot to say in terms of my history with them. First song I ever heard by them was probably Karma Police, at least in any like real capacity, because I think I had heard Creep before. And it always kind of sounded like 90s rock to me, like, in that Nirvana vein. And it always just kind of went by me. I kind of glossed over it every time I heard it, which was only a handful of times. When I first listened to Karma Police, it's like actually listening to real Radiohead for the first time, because it wasn't Pablo Honey. And I remember it being just so melodic, and the chords were so interesting to me, and the chorus was great, and the outro was great, and I was just like, what is this band? So I started to kind of dive into them, and that was probably like 2008, 2009. And the first album, because of that time frame, that I really dived into was In Rainbows, which is my all-time favorite Radiohead album. Which is actually the case for a lot of people. I know there's a lot of respect for Kid A and OK Computer, but it seems like In Rainbows has this real staying emotional power for a lot of people. And that was definitely the case for me. I adore that album. All-time favorite, like easy 9.5 out of 10 for me. So I think that's it for my history on the band. So I'm just going to jump right into the A Moon-Shaped Pool review. Now, track number 1 is Burn the Witch. So this was the first track to be released from the album, with a little claymation music video. And even from the teasers, I was like, is this really like a song that they're going to do? Is this a bit? Because it was like super staccato strings. I don't remember what the term is. It's hitting like stringed instruments with the back of your bow rather than the front. It's like latingo or something like that. I'll put it up here. But Johnny like arranged this orchestral piece around this song, which apparently had been kicking around for a while. I hadn't heard it before. I don't know if it was ever played in full, but there were like piano snippets that were teased here and there in the past. Radiohead is kind of infamous for taking really old songs that never get completed and then bringing them through. Like every song, they don't ever like really abandon anything. They just like bring it forward from the past and rehash it until it feels right. And that's what they did with Burn the Witch. And it sounds like a completely different song. You got these nice swelling strings, great bass. It was a really fantastic piece, and it took a little while to warm up to because it was a little different, and it was much more organic than the Radiohead we were used to, because last time we got anything remotely organic in terms of instrumentation was like In Rainbows. And even then, that was predominantly guitar. Some piano, some strings, but not quite to this level. So it was sort of like a refreshing change of pace after the super electronic King of Limbs. So people heard this and they're just like, yeah, this is, yeah. But then there were people comparing it to Viva La Vida and saying that they hoped that Radiohead weren't doing a Coldplay, which, two things. One, it doesn't sound like Viva La Vida really at all. Just because there's strings in it doesn't make it Viva La Vida. It has some pop appeal to it, Burn the Witch does, but I wouldn't really call it a pop song. Not explicitly. And B, Viva La Vida was Coldplay's best album, probably. So, like, comparing it to that album or that song isn't like a big insult. So I don't know where those claims were grounded, but fantastic song. I loved it when it first came out. Listened to it a lot. A few days later, Daydreaming drops with the Paul Thomas Anderson video. Great music video. Even better song. The piano in it is fantastic. This one took a few listens to really kind of get into. It was this was like some true Radiohead stuff because it wasn't like really experimental. It was just interestingly composed and arranged, to the point where you had to listen to it to get used to it in typical Radiohead fashion, understand all the components, and then once you understood and got comfortable with the layout of the song, then you could really start to appreciate it. And dude, was this song a freaking grower. Absolutely fantastic. I even heard, I want to know if I'm the only one, I heard little elements of motion picture soundtrack in the verse melodies. Like towards the end of each line of the verse, when it went back to that 4 chord, I could hear just hints of motion picture soundtrack in there. I'm curious to know if anyone else felt that too. Anyway, with that video and song coming out, they also said when the album was coming out, and it came out exactly that time. Unlike Radiohead, who seemed to mix things up, they released King of Limbs a day early, but this was just right on time. A Moon-Shaped Pool was the name of the album, and I remember looking at the like not official release really, because Google sort of messed things up and leaked the information early about the track listing and the name. But once the album actually dropped, I wasn't at home at the time, so I couldn't actually listen. I looked at the track listing. You got Burn the Witch. I was like, good. Daydreaming. Good. Interesting that they were the first 2 tracks. I wouldn't really have expected that. Dex Dark. New song. Haven't heard it before. Desert Island Disc. Interesting. Heard that in Paris when he played it live there. I wasn't there, but, obviously videos. Full Stop. I was like, cool. That song made it through. Glass Eyes, never heard of it before. Identikit, that made it on there. Numbers, haven't heard of that before. Come to find out it was Silent Spring. Present Tense, that was the one where I was like, yes, it made it. Present Tense followed very closely by Identikit were my two favorite songs from the past, like 6-7 years of unreleased songs. I was like, they made it. Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Sailor, Rich Man, Poor Man, Beggar Man, Thief. I was like, dang, that's a crazy title. But okay. And then True Love Waits. This was the one where I was like, whoa. After 15 years, it finally has a not live performance release. And this song is like almost as old as I am, which is insane that it's taken this long to make it onto an actual studio album. And there's a lot of context and interesting connections with this song and just different things about Radiohead and Tom York. And I'll get to those later. But Burn the Witch, Daydreaming, also, I already kind of talked about those. I haven't listened to them a ton in the context of the album, just because I've been excited about the new songs. But I've still been listening to them a lot, and I still really, really like them. Track 3, Dex Dark. Very Massive Attack-esque song, with some like interesting like major chords thrown in there. This song might be actually currently for me still the biggest grower on the album because I love it more and more with each listen. And when I first heard it, I was slightly underwhelmed. So it's gone from being just like a to a yes. Very groovy. All the components are fantastic. This is the first time, I could be wrong, I think it's the first time that the choir on this album really shines through during like the little interlude between the verses. Super haunting. Really dark, awesome track. And this and Daydreaming to a point kind of set the stage for the mood of the album. Very chill, very ambient, interesting organic electric combinations of instrumentation. So I'm like, good, cool. This leads flawlessly into Desert Island Disc. This song is, I'd say one of my least favorites, only because it's semi-repetitious and it's not a very short song. So like before it changes to the minor section at the end of the piece, which lasts for maybe a minute and a half, you have like 3 minutes of just the same guitar riff over and over and over, which isn't horrible, but it's not extremely engaging to me. Guitar playing is really nice though, very Neil Young-esque, very Nick Drake-esque. It's very, very good. But at the same time, just the way the song is arranged and composed, it just spins its tires a little bit for me. Still not really anything super negative to say, it's just not really my favorite track on the album. It's one of my least favorite. And then, Full Stop. Definitely changed from the live performance that we heard. Starts with just drums, and then you get this nice like low pass up to normal pass, whatever, filter on the bass. And this is kind of where the album starts to really highlight minimalism. Because at the end of the day, the bass is extremely simple. The song is honestly just... At least the bass is just a half-step note going back and forth. Super simple, and that's pretty much the crux of the backing instrumentation for this whole thing. You get Johnny with some nice little like guitar over the top of it, Fantastic stuff. But like at the crux, it's just this driving half-step melody throughout pretty much the whole thing. And it just goes to show what Radiohead can do with so little. Next track is Glass Eyes, which blew me away on my first listen. I wasn't expecting a dark piano ballad. Kind of a ballad. It sounds like a ballad. Super, super beautiful. Just awesome, straight piano, nice strings swelling in at good points. Really straightforward, and I don't remember when the last time I've heard anything quite like this from Radiohead. I mean, it's been a while since there's been a song like this. Like maybe Codex, but that was much more of like a straightforward, straight chords type song, like Videotape maybe. Whereas this is flowing arpeggios. Absolutely fantastic and beautiful. I loved it on my first listen, and I still love it now. Then Identikit. I have mixed emotions on this song because when I first heard it, I heard this like new backing vocals that were supposed to be Ed's, like it was Ed's in the live version, and the melody of it was slightly different, and Ed, as far as I can tell, is not doing his backing vocals anymore, or at least he's not singing the ones that are in the song. The section after the Broken Hearts Make It Rain build up is changed. And the thing is, like, I really liked the live version. When I heard this one, I wasn't disappointed. I was just like, it's just different. You know, it's a different type of thing. And now I think I love it even more than the live version. I love you still have the synths after the Broken Hearts Make It Rain section. And now you have this like choir that's just singing Broken Hearts Make It Rain. And it's just swelling over these synths. And then it's after that you get some nice guitar from Johnny over the rest of the verses, which I think is a great choice. It makes the verses much more dynamic because you have a new element. Awesome solo by Johnny at the end of the song, and then that just kind of closes it out. So, like, Full Stop and Identikit are the two rockers of the album, and even then, they don't really have much of, like, a push to them. Well, not really a push, not really much of an oomph, because this album at its core is very chill, and it never really wants to rock out, which I find to be really fascinating. And I think it works great. Next song is The Numbers, also known as Silent Spring. Now this was an interesting song. Much better than the live version. I love when I get to hear a live, it doesn't happen often, get to hear a live version of a song that's like, okay, and then the studio version is like, okay, I got it, that's good. And it seems like only Radiohead can really do that. Maybe The National to a point. But I heard this on the record and I'm like, okay, this is Silent Spring. I was wondering where it was, if it was going to be on here. And man, is it fantastic. More great guitar work in the vein of, you know, the Nick Drake, Neil Young that Tom seems to be channeling in a couple of these songs. With fantastic strings by Johnny. Great orchestral arrangements at the end of this song. There's not a whole lot to say about it. I just think it's a fantastic song. I don't go out of my way to listen to it, but every time it's on, I let it play because it's good. Then we have present tense. It was the present tense, but now it's just present tense. Now this is one I went into thinking like, I hope they didn't screw it up because they've changed identikit. Not for the worse. I don't know for the better yet, but I went into this one thinking like, I hope that this is great because when I heard it in 2009, around 2009, that's when it was played live, I think, at Latitude. I was like, this is fantastic. I love this song. And in the album, it has this like bossa nova samba feel to it with like some interesting like percussion that sounds, you know, very, I don't know what the term is, not tropical, whatever the ethnicity area of the world is that this comes from. The guitar changed up slightly just because of the rhythm or whatever, but it was just still fantastic. The whole song pretty much remained the same, and it was arranged perfectly. Like, this was like listening to the album for the first time. This was the one song where I'm like, that hit every note perfectly for me. I loved that track. Like, I adored it. 10 out of 10. There was nothing wrong with it to me. I thought it hit all of its highlights perfectly. It accented everything it needed to. And I had and still have no problems with it. I just, for some reason, really love it. I love the change halfway through the song into, like, the major. It hits that, like, I suppose it's the tonic chord, and then goes to the 4. And it's just a very interesting change of pace for a Radiohead track to do that kind of progression. And I loved it, and it worked out great, and I can just talk about this track for years, but I won't. I'll move on to the next one. Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Beggar, Pie, Thief Man, Tom York, Poor Man. I think that's what it's called. Tinker Tailor is just what people call it. This might be the weakest track on the album, objectively. It, super simple, again. Kid A-esque electronics with, like, the synths in the beginning. All mostly major chords. And it doesn't really feel like it goes anywhere. It's just kind of there. Again, wouldn't call it bad. It's just kind of like a song that just got farted out into existence. I usually skip it just because I'm not interested in it, really. If I listen to the whole album, obviously I'll just let it play, but I never go out of my way to listen to it. And that's just kind of really all I have to say about it. The final track of the album. This was the one I was really interested to get to. True Love Waits. Now, the live version that has been played for 20 years now is an acoustic guitar, and it has a very specific feel to it. It sounds something like this. That's kind of the whole mood of the song, is just a driving thing with this very emotional melody sung over the top of it. And it makes it kind of feel like a rock song to a point, like a rock ballad. And then you listen to the album version of the song, and you get this super, super full, rich sounding piano doing just this. Just taking that whole formula and stripping down as much as you possibly can from it. They removed a chord from the song. It was C major, E minor, A minor, A flat major 7 to a point. That was kind of the original structure of it. And now it's just C major, A minor, A flat major 7. They took out the E minor and replaced it with just another measure of C major, which I think is really interesting. And it kind of threw me off at first because I was like, but are you going to change? You going to change? No? Okay. Some nice, like, twinkly piano starts playing over the top of it partway through the song. Some nice super low bass hits in, like, the perfect moments. Your Crazy Kitten Smile, it just like hits this low bass note. I think it's an A flat or like a C or something, but that just like highlights the mood perfectly. His singing is perfectly on point. It's so emotional. And to kind of encapsulate this whole song, this song originated around the time he got together with his girlfriend slash life partner. And he recently basically broke up with her after like 23 years. And now this song gets a studio release. So a lot of people are like referencing those two things in tandem and saying how it gives like this song a whole new meaning. And it's kind of interesting that he's had this song for as long as he's had this relationship, and the song has kind of just taken on a lot of different meanings for him. And like the no, I'm so sorry. The last lines of the song are pretty much just don't leave, don't leave. Like that's the chorus essentially, and it really makes it for a heartbreaking closer to the album. Really fantastic. I wasn't sure if I would like it. When I first started hearing the piano, I'm like, okay, what are you doing? This is weird. And by the end, I was just like, wow. It just goes to show what you can do with like 3 piano notes for each chord, just like playing individually, and for being such a minimalistic song, it is super powerful. So that's pretty much my thoughts on every song from A Moon-Shaped Pool. As I was listening to it for the first couple of days, I was like, how do I feel about this album? Because I have a certain feel about all the other Radiohead albums. You know, I know how In Rainbows feels to me in relation to the rest of my life. I know how Kid A feels, OK Computer, Hail to the Thief, etc. How does this feel to me? And I've kind of come to realize that it is almost as good as In Rainbows for me. It doesn't fill that hole that In Rainbows filled. It doesn't have that emotional connection to me, but it's just a bunch of really well-made tracks. People are calling it the Kid A of the 2010s, which I would say, yeah, I would go as far to say that. A bunch of amazing arrangements. Bands just aren't making music like this these days, and it's so refreshing to see just these masterminds and experts pull together an album as good as this. I think I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Straight, simple, easy. Songs like Tinker Tailor and Desert Island Disc not as strong to me. And like I said, not really a huge emotional pull to it, but all in all, fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Highly recommend listening to it. Might be a little difficult for some people who aren't used to Radiohead, to which I would say try OK Computer or In Rainbows first, and then check out A Moon-Shaped Pool, because I think that this might be a good transitionary album from some of Radiohead's rockier stuff to things like Kid A, because it's a nice amalgamation of a lot of their components they use in their music. And that's all I have for you guys. I hope you enjoyed my review of A Moon-Shaped Pool. If they release, I know they released, they're going to release Spectre, I believe, which is their canned James Bond theme song, which is a pretty good track. They're going to release, I believe, that and maybe another track. Well, definitely another track, but maybe one that we don't know what it is, or another unreleased live song. I hope it's Cut a Hole. I really hope it is. Those are going to drop in, I think, September or June. I think September. And maybe I'll leave a comment on them in the description of this video, just to let you know how I feel about them. Thank you for watching, and go away.